The blizzard that swept across London on Christmas Eve was merciless. The freezing wind cut through the West End streets like blades of ice. Evelyn clutched her 1-year-old daughter Lily against her chest, her thin wool coat no match for the biting cold. Behind her, the ornate carved door of their detached house slammed shut, sealing away the warm glow of the fireplace and the sound of laughter and crushing the 3 years of her marriage into dust. "Get out. Take that useless burden and get out," her mother-in-law's shrill curses cut through the howling snow. "My son has Sophia now, 1,000 times better than a boring woman like you. You've hogged the mistress's place long enough, it's high time you were thrown out." The husband she had loved for 5 years, Aidan, stood lazily in the doorway, his arm draped around the heavily made-up Sophia, his expression one of utter indifference, not a trace of guilt or regret. In Evelyn's arms, Lily's tiny face had gone pale from the cold, her thin, pitiful whimper tugged at Evelyn's heart with every sob. She had never imagined that the Christmas dinner she had so carefully prepared would become a tryst for her husband and his mistress, and that she and her baby would be the surplus casualties of that farce. The snow fell heavier, and the tarmac quickly turned white. Evelyn staggered forward, clutching her child, through the deserted streets. Hot tears streaked down her cheeks and froze into tiny beads almost instantly. She had no money, her phone had been smashed by Aidan. With nowhere else to go, she headed for Kent, to the door she had not approached in years, the old family manor she had walked away from in anger. The door swung open, spilling warm yellow light onto the stoop. Her father, Brian, stood in the doorway, his silver hair catching the glow. She had defied him, married a penniless Aidan, and cut all ties with her family. "Daddy!" Evelyn's voice broke, and her knees nearly gave way. Brian looked at his daughter's frost-blue face and the shivering infant in her arms. His gentle eyes hardened in an instant. He asked no questions, simply reached out and carefully took Lily, wrapping the child in his heavy cashmere coat. Then he raised his gaze toward central London and spoke, his voice calm yet carrying an unmistakable weight of power. "They picked the wrong family." Those few words jolted Evelyn to her core. She saw her father's steadiness and suddenly realized how foolish she had been. She had always believed he was just a small-town shopkeeper, and she had thrown away her inheritance for a man she thought she loved, content to become an ordinary housewife, enduring the petty cruelties of her in-laws. Brian led them into the warm, welcoming manor. A maid immediately brought hot tea and cashmere throws. As Evelyn watched her daughter finally settle into sleep, the pent-up humiliations of years broke free. Brian handed her a black private card and a brand-new custom phone, his voice low and certain. A divorce would be too easy for them. "You are the sole heir of the Hunter family, one of the oldest names in Kent. From today on, I will protect you. Everything they owe you, we will take back." Outside, the storm still raged, but inside Evelyn's heart, a wildfire of revenge had already kindled. Her counterattack had only just begun. The next morning, while London society still basked in the festive cheer of Christmas, Aidan swanned into an exclusive holiday party with Sophia and his mother. In front of friends and acquaintances, he played the wounded husband with practiced ease. "It was a terrible position to be in," Aidan said, raising a champagne flute, the picture of elegance. "Evelyn is simply too difficult, she neglected our own daughter. I couldn't go on living with her. Sophia is gentle and kind, she truly understands me. She's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with." His mother piled on, tearfully painting Evelyn as violent, extravagant, and a drag on Aidan's career. The guests murmured in sympathy, swallowing their lies without a second thought. Sophia nestled against Aidan, a triumphant smile playing on her lips, already playing the part of the new lady of the house. She had her eye on his property and savings, eager to step fully into Evelyn's place. But just as the guests were offering their condolences and praising Sophia's virtue, the giant projection screen at the far end of the hall blazed to life. The high-definition footage from the villa's security system, unedited, uncut, played for all to see. Aidan and Sophia entwined on Christmas night, the vicious mother-in-law screaming at and striking Evelyn, the three of them hurling the still-recovering mother and her baby out into the storm. A stunned silence fell, then erupted into gasps and murmurs. Aidan's face went white. His champagne flute shattered on the floor, drenching his expensive suit. Sophia's smile froze, her body rigid with disbelief. At that moment, the grand doors swung open. Evelyn, no longer the cowering housewife, swept in wearing a bespoke cashmere gown, her heels steady on the marble floor. Her makeup was flawless, her air icy. Behind her came a line of black-suited bodyguards. Brian followed, his cold gaze sweeping over the panicked trio. His voice rang through the hall. No one, no outsider, tramples on a daughter of the Hunter family and gets away with it. Aidan's pupils contracted. His mind went blank. In that instant, he finally understood. The woman he had thrown away was not some plain nobody, but an heiress to a dynasty he could never hope to match. And the most devastating blow was yet to come. The air in the ballroom seemed to solidify. Aidan collapsed onto the priceless rug, champagne soaking into his Armani. Sophia's fake lashes trembled, her crimson lips opened and closed without a sound. Evelyn stood in the center, the crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow over her. Her red cashmere dress showed off her perfect figure. She lifted her chin and let her gaze drift over the faces she once called friends, everyone she'd shared Christmas dinners with, exchanged gifts with. Now they all looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Evelyn, it's a misunderstanding, it has to be. Aidan scrambled to his feet and lurched toward her, his shoes crunching on the glass. Someone faked that footage. You know I would never. Faked. Evelyn's voice was calm, but it cut through the noise. Aidan, I paid for that security system with my own dowry 3 years ago. 1080p high definition, night vision, cloud storage. Do you want me to pull the entire year's archive? Aidan's face went from white to grey. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. He remembered that system. Evelyn had insisted on it for safety, and he'd mocked her for being petty. Now it was his undoing. Brian stepped forward, his black coat gleaming dully. Though in his 60s, he stood tall and straight, silver hair slicked back. His grey-blue eyes swept over Aidan, and Aidan involuntarily stepped back, bumping into Sophia. Mr. Hunter, please, let me explain. Aidan's voice was trembling now. Explain? Brian gave a cold laugh. Explain how you threw my daughter out on Christmas Eve. Explain how you, he flicked a glance at Sophia, as if she were something nauseating, carried on with this woman while still married. I didn't. We waited until after the divorce. Shut up. Evelyn cut him off, drawing a document from her handbag. This is the divorce application you signed last week, dated December 20th. The surveillance footage shows you still in bed with her on December 24th. Aidan, bigamy in this country can carry up to 7 years in prison. Need me to refresh your memory? A muffled gasp went through the crowd. A woman in a dark green velvet gown, the wife of one of Aidan's key clients, covered her mouth, looking at him with disgust. Another man, a university friend, shook his head and quietly retreated a few steps. Sophia finally found her voice. This is a setup. Aidan and Evelyn were separated for years. Separated? Evelyn tilted her head, as if puzzled. Then please tell me, what exactly did separation look like while we still lived together in Wimbledon? Was it me cooking your 3 meals a day, or waiting up late for you to come home from work, or… Enough! Aidan roared, his eyes bloodshot. What do you want? I've already been more than fair with the division. The house is yours, we split the savings. You call that fair? Evelyn's voice rose, echoing under the high ceiling. Aidan White, your company was saved by my father's money. The house was bought with my dowry. The Bentley was my 3rd anniversary gift to you. When did you ever own anything of your own? The hall went deathly quiet. Everyone watched Aidan's face cycle from grey to purple. All the boasts he'd made about his business acumen and investment vision were stripped bare in that moment. Brian raised a hand, a bodyguard stepped forward and handed a thick file to Evelyn. She opened it, reading aloud, Mr. White, I hereby give you formal notice that effective immediately, I am withdrawing all Hunter family funds from your company. All accounts, properties, and vehicles that form part of the joint estate will be fully liquidated by my legal team. You can't. Aidan lunged forward, but the guards held him back. I can. Evelyn closed the file, her eyes blazing. And regarding our daughter Lily, I am applying for sole custody on grounds including domestic violence, adultery, and child abandonment. Mr. White, I suggest you prepare yourself." She turned, her gown sweeping behind her. Brian fell into step beside her as they walked toward the exit. Behind them, the ballroom exploded into chaos, and Aidan's frantic shouts faded into the distance. At the door, Evelyn paused and looked back at the still trembling Sophia. "One more thing, Miss Green. Those properties and savings you've been eyeing, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. I suggest you find a good lawyer, because Mr. White is about to be buried in debt. And you," she smiled, a cold smile, "as his true love, I'm sure you'll be happy to share his troubles." The doors closed behind them. Evelyn stood in the corridor and drew in the cold night air. London was still freezing, but for the first time she felt a warmth in her chest. "Well done." Brian's voice came from beside her, carrying a hint of pride. "What's next?" Evelyn looked toward the end of the corridor, where the chandeliers scattered light like stars in her eyes. "Dad, I want to go home and see Lily." "Good." Brian gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "I'll have the car brought around." The Hunter estate sprawled across more than 100 acres in the heart of Kent. The main house was a Victorian sandstone manor with turrets and eaves that threw layered shadows in the moonlight. Evelyn walked up the winding gravel drive, her boots crunching in the silence. 12 years. She had been away for 12 years. She had been 20, studying art history at University College London. When she met Aidan in a bar, he was 25, a struggling entrepreneur in a cheap suit with a smile so confident it bordered on arrogance. She fell for him the way young women do, convinced it was love. Her father had objected. Brian had done his homework. Aidan came from a modest background, raised by a widowed mother on insurance payments. It wasn't snobbery, it was the calculation in Aidan's eyes that set off Brian's alarms. But Evelyn wouldn't listen. She thought her father was trying to trap her in an arranged marriage. "If you insist on marrying him, don't come back," Brian had said, his voice cold as ice. Evelyn had slammed the door. In the 12 years that followed, she had only seen her father once at her mother's funeral, where she stood in the last pew, 5-month-old Lily in her arms, watching his stooped back. She had wanted to say so much, but in the end she had turned and walked away. Now she pushed open the door to the nursery. A soft night light glowed over Lily's custom crib, where the little girl lay buried under a cashmere blanket, breathing steadily. The nanny told her Lily had fussed for a while but settled after her bottle. Evelyn knelt beside the crib and gently stroked her daughter's fine blonde hair. Lily's long lashes were like hers, her straight nose was like her father's. That thought twisted something in Evelyn's chest, but a fiercer feeling, protection, quickly swallowed it. "Mummy will never let anyone hurt you again," she whispered, pressing a kiss to Lily's forehead. "I promise." She crept out and went to the library. Brian was still awake, a glass of whiskey in hand by the fire. He nodded for her to sit. "Lily asleep?" "Yes." Evelyn took the glass he offered and sipped. The amber warmth spread through her. After a pause, Brian said, "Do you know why I opposed it so strongly?" Evelyn's fingers tightened around the glass. "Because you looked into him." "Not just that." Brian leaned back, the firelight playing over his face. "I had him investigated. He was already deep in debt before he met you, gambling, loan sharks, failed startups. Over £50,000. Evelyn's knuckles went white. She had never known. "He targeted you for Hunter money from the start." Brian's voice was flat, as if stating a simple fact. "I wanted to tell you, but you were too stubborn. You wouldn't have believed me, you'd have thought I was trying to break you up. So you let me go." Evelyn's voice trembled. "I was waiting for you to come back." Brian met her eyes, his grey-blue gaze warm in the firelight. "I waited all along. Your mother's last words were, 'Don't let Evelyn suffer out there alone.'" Evelyn's tears finally spilled over, darkening the fabric of her dress. She remembered being turned away at her mother's hospital room, immediate family only. She had stood in the corridor with Lily, listening to the beeping monitors, and never got to say goodbye. "Mum." She choked. "She knew you were out there," Brian said softly. "She checked your social media every day." She knew you nearly died giving birth to Lily. She knew you baked your own Christmas cookies. She knew how that bastard treated you. She knew everything, she just didn't want to put you in a difficult position. Evelyn set down her glass and buried her face in her hands. The years of suppressed pain burst out in heaving sobs. She shook with the force of it, afraid to wake Lily. Brian came around the table, sat beside her, and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was 12 years too late. "It's all over," he murmured, stroking her hair. "From now on, you have me." When she finally calmed, she wiped her eyes with her sleeve and took a shaky breath. "Dad, I want to take over the family business. Full time." Brian raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? Your emotions are still raw." "I'm sure." She looked up, her red-rimmed eyes fierce. "Aidan's company still has at least 30% Hunter ownership through offshore holdings. He thinks they're venture capital, but control is in our hands. I want to strip him of everything." Brian stared at her for a long moment, then laughed, with pride, with approval, and with a hint of iron. "You're more decisive than your mother was." "I take after you." Evelyn smiled back, a similar glint in her eye. "You taught me, never show weakness to an opponent." The next morning, Evelyn walked into the Hunter family offices in the City of London, her first time in 12 years. Her father gave her a tour of every floor: trading, asset management, legal, overseas investments. Every employee nodded and said Miss Evelyn as she passed. The Hunter fortune dated back to the mid-19th century: wool, then railways, shipping, property, a quiet but immense empire. Unlike the flashy new rich, the Hunters valued discretion and deep connections. Brian, the fourth-generation head, had diversified across hundreds of investments, from tech start UPS to private banks. "You didn't know because our family motto is don't show off," Brian said, pouring 2 coffees in the top-floor office. "But it's time you learned everything." He opened a safe and took out a thick binder: the complete Hunter assets: real estate, stocks, bonds, art, trusts. "And by the way, when you turned 18, your mother set up an irrevocable trust in your name. Principal and income are yours alone, untouchable by marriage." Evelyn flipped to the first page and stopped breathing. This is mine." "Yes." "Your mother insisted. My daughter can marry a poor man she loves, but he won't get his hands on her dowry." Evelyn traced the edge of the page, hearing her mother's gentle but unyielding voice. That quiet-voiced bookworm had never compromised on what mattered. "I've scheduled the legal team for this afternoon," Evelyn said. "We need full forensic accounting of Aidan's holdings, custody filings, everything." "Already arranged," Brian said. 11 o'clock, the conference room. 3 days after Christmas, London society exploded. The Daily Mail online ran, "Down and Out heiress strikes back, Hunter family daughter revenges after affair," with a photo of Evelyn striding into the party and Aidan sprawled on the floor. It detailed the Christmas Eve events, the video evidence, the affair, and the revelation of her background. The Times financial section: Hunter withdrawal hits white tech liquidity. Shares dropped 15% in 2 hours. Social media went berserk. #Justice for Evelyn trended in the UK. Aidan's and Sophia's accounts were flooded. Someone dug up Sophia's Instagram. She'd been frequenting luxury venues for months, spending far beyond her salary as a marketing assistant. So she was a gold digger? No, they'd been at it for ages. Look at her and the mother-in-law, they were all in on it. Aidan's phone wouldn't stop ringing: partners, investors, friends, all dropping him. One key client sent a termination notice: "Mr. White, due to management ethics concerns, we are ending our relationship." He paced his apartment, tie askew, shirt untucked. Empty whiskey bottles littered the floor. Sophia wept on the sofa, her mascara running. "How much of your assets are frozen?" she sobbed. "You said the Hunters were small time. How the hell was I supposed to know?" Aidan spun on her, bloodshot. "She said her dad had a few shops. I checked, they were just a few shops." "Did you check her identity, you idiot?" Sophia shrieked. "A heiress like that can live quietly if she wants, and you fell for it." Aidan thought back. Evelyn never bought labels, but her clothes were good quality. She budgeted carefully. She baked her own Christmas cookies. He'd thought she was frugal, now he understood it was Hunter discretion. The Bentley, he muttered. She said she saved up from writing, and I believed it. Sophia grabbed her Hermes and stood. I'm leaving. Call me when you've sorted this out. Where are you going? Home. You don't have a clean pound to your name now, do you expect me to drown with you? Sophia, you said you loved me. The door slammed. Footsteps faded down the corridor. Aidan was alone. His phone buzzed, his mother. Aidan, have you seen the news? That bitches, you have to do something. Your uncle says the bank is taking the house. Mum, Aidan said, his voice hoarse. I'm finished. The cursing on the other end turned to wailing. He hung up and sank onto the sofa, head in his hands. A new text appeared, from an unknown number. Mr. White, this is Thomas Smith, legal counsel for the Hunter family. You are summoned to the High Court Family Division this Friday at 10 a.m. for a preliminary hearing regarding your divorce and custody of Lily White. Please see attached. Aidan stared at the screen. Then he frantically scrolled through his contacts and called an old number. Hello. Henry. It's Aidan White. You know the Hunters, please. I need you to pass a message to Evelyn. I want to apologize. A pause. Then a dry laugh. Aidan, do you have any idea what the Hunters mean in Kent? My advice, get a good lawyer and stop wasting your time. And don't call this number again. Click. The dial tone echoed. Aidan gripped his phone, ice cold. Friday morning, Evelyn stood before her wardrobe, choosing what to wear to the hearing. Lily was already fed and crawling on the floor, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Brian watched from the doorway, a rare soft smile on his face. She's just like you were. Really? Evelyn chose a navy wool suit, tailored, sharp. I don't remember. Your mother took loads of photos. They're in the attic. He picked Lily up, she grabbed his tie and giggled. I'll have them sorted. Evelyn dressed, checked herself in the mirror, navy set off her pale skin, the cut accentuated her figure, heels added height. She swept her hair into a low ponytail and put on her mother's pearl studs, untouched for 12 years. Let's go. Outside the family court, reporters swarmed. When Evelyn stepped out of the black Rolls-Royce, cameras flashed. Mrs. Hunter, what are your demands? Will you seek full asset division? And custody? She nodded but didn't stop. Her lawyers and guards cleared a path through the oak doors into the corridor, old wood and paper, colored light from high windows. Aidan was already there, gaunt, dark-eyed, his suit barely pressed. When he saw Evelyn, he lurched forward. Evelyn. Mr. White. Thomas Smith stepped between them. Please do not approach my client before the hearing. Aidan ignored him, staring at Evelyn. I know I was wrong. Let me explain, work pressure. Pressure made you cheat. Evelyn's voice was flat. Aidan, I vomited for 5 months when I was pregnant with Lily. You never came to one scan because you were busy. Was your pressure worse than mine? Aidan's mouth opened, but no words came. Evelyn turned and walked into the courtroom. The hearing went smoothly. Evelyn's team presented the video evidence, communications, financial records, and her independent trust. Aidan's lawyer could only fall back on irreconcilable differences. The judge, a woman in her 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, asked, Mr. White, if the marriage had broken down long ago, why did you file only last week? Aidan stammered, I was hoping to reconcile. The surveillance shows you expelled your nursing wife and infant into a blizzard at 20 degrees Fahrenheit with no phone, no cash, no coat. The judge's voice was flat. Is that your definition of reconciling? I'd been drinking. Alcohol is not a defense. She signed the order. Temporary sole custody is granted to Evelyn Hunter. Mr. White, you may have supervised visitation once a week. The asset freeze remains in place. Aidan slumped. Evelyn walked out into the pale sunlight, paused on the steps, and faced the cameras. I have one thing to say, she said clearly. Domestic violence and infidelity aren't private matters, they are crimes. I hope my story encourages others in similar situations to seek legal help. Thank you. She got into the car and closed the door. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Back to the office," she said, leaning back. 3 meetings this afternoon. The first Monday of the new year, the city hummed back to life. In the Hunter boardroom, Evelyn faced a war map covered in red annotations. "White Tech's cash flow won't survive the quarter," said investment director Alan Cohen, pointing with a laser. "Their main client, Standard Credit, has pulled out. 3 smaller clients are watching. Once Standard officially leaves, they'll follow." "Debt side?" Evelyn asked. 2 secured loans from HSBC, totaling £4.7 million, collateralized by company equity and the Wimbledon house. If the share price keeps falling, the bank can call the loans. Currently down 38%, about 12% from the margin call. "Sell our remaining indirect holdings gradually," Evelyn said. "Not all at once, push it down slowly. Don't cause panic. A steady bleed." Alan nodded. Evelyn turned to Thomas Smith. "Full custody hearing?" "Mid-March. They've filed a motion claiming Aidan's financial distress was caused by your withdrawal, and they've requested a psychological evaluation of you." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "They threw me out, and now they're worried about my mental state." "Standard tactics," Smith said. "But they overlooked that you have no psychiatric history, while Aidan saw a therapist twice last year for moderate anxiety with impulse control issues. We've obtained the notes." "Good." Evelyn turned to Harrison, the private investigator. "What about Sophia Green?" Harrison spoke from the corner. 28, marketing degree, worked in PR. She joined White Tech as a marketing assistant through a headhunter last March, and within 2 months she was sleeping with Aidan. More interesting, 2 months before she joined, she received an anonymous £50,000 payment from a shell company in the Caymans. "We're tracing the beneficial owner." "Anonymously?" Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "So she may not have been a coincidence." "Not conclusive yet," Harrison said. "But the timing is suggestive. £50,000 was more than twice her previous salary. It fits a paid placement." Evelyn tapped her pen. "Keep digging. If there's a puppet master, I want to know who." After the meeting, she sat alone, watching the grey Thames flow past. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. "Dinner tonight?" Lily said Grandpa. She smiled and replied, "Yes." February. London still cold, but the days were lengthening. Evelyn found a rhythm: breakfast with Lily, office by 9, home by 5. She wasn't the dutiful wife anymore, nor did she indulge in the extravagance the press speculated about. She introduced family-friendly policies at Hunter nurseries, extended leave, flexible hours, and Brian backed her publicly. "My daughter understands this era better than I do." Meanwhile, she continued to squeeze White Tech. By mid-February, shares breached the margin line. HSBC started foreclosure on the Wimbledon house. Aidan tried to file for bankruptcy, but the court cited suspected asset concealment. The media called it the classic aristocratic revenge. Analysts dissected her every move. Some praised her coolness, others questioned her ruthlessness. Evelyn paid no attention. She only let herself soften when she watched Lily sleep. Mid-February, a surprise visitor. "Miss Hunter, a woman claiming to be Aidan White's mother, is here," the receptionist said. "She insists on seeing you." Evelyn's pen paused. She remembered the Christmas Eve screams, the slammed door, "Take your burden and get out." The memory still chilled her stomach. Send her up. Margaret White, once so imperious, had aged a decade. Thin hair, puffy eyes, her jewels replaced by a grey coat and a worn handbag. She stood in the doorway, taking in the sleek office, Evelyn behind the mahogany desk, nothing like the submissive daughter-in-law she remembered. "Evie, Evelyn," Margaret croaked. "Mrs. White, please sit." Evelyn gestured to the sofa. Margaret shuffled forward, twisting her bag strap. A secretary brought tea. She didn't touch it. "I came to apologize," she said, barely audible above the street noise. "On Christmas Eve, I said awful things. I'm sorry." Evelyn leaned back. "You're here for Aidan, aren't you?" Margaret's lips pressed together, tears filled her eyes. "He's been in a bad way, drinking, not eating." His uncle found him on the bathroom floor, his wrists. She didn't finish. Evelyn felt a faint squeeze in her chest, not love, not forgiveness, but a twinge of humanity. 5 years of shared life, and the father of her child. He needs professional help, not my forgiveness, she said, more gently now. If you want, I can recommend some therapists. Margaret looked up, startled. You'd help him? I'd help Lily's father. I don't want her to grow up knowing her father killed himself. But that doesn't mean I'll drop the custody case. Evelyn paused. Those are separate things. Margaret bowed her head, then rose, clutching her bag. Thank you for seeing me. I'll go. At the door, Evelyn called, which hospital? St. Mary's, the emergency observation unit. They're keeping him 72 hours. Evelyn nodded. After Margaret left, she sat a long time, staring at the grey sky. That evening, she went to St. Mary's. No father, no guards, just her. The corridor smelled of antiseptic. Aidan was in a side room, in a hospital gown, his back to the door, painfully thin. His dinner tray was untouched. Evelyn walked in. Aidan turned slowly, and when he saw her, his eyes widened. You've lost weight, she said. He looked at his bony hands. Why did you come? Your mother came to me. Aidan flinched. She shouldn't have bothered you. I told her to come. Evelyn sat across from him. Aidan, I don't love you anymore. But I don't want my daughter's father dying in a cheap flat, understand? His throat moved, his eyes reddened. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I was like a different person. Don't apologize. Her voice was steady. Apologies won't change that night. But you can choose what to do with the rest of your life. Lily will grow up and ask who her father was. Do you want her to see a man who stood up and tried, or one who let his own mistakes bury him? Aidan looked at her, a faint light in his eyes. I'll have my lawyer send you names of therapists, Evelyn said, standing. If you commit to treatment, I'll reconsider visitation. But custody stays with me. Those are two different things. At the door, she looked back. Live, Aidan. For Lily's sake. She left. Aidan sat for a long while, then reached for the phone. Mum, get rid of the whiskey. And find me a therapist. March brought the full custody hearing. Evelyn's team was ready. Harrison arrived with a brown folder. We traced the source of Sophia's £50,000. The shell company Blue Shield Consulting is controlled, after 2 layers, by Arthur Grayson. Evelyn frowned. Arthur Grayson? Aidan's university friend? The one in software outsourcing? The same. Grayson Tech is a direct competitor. Over 5 years, they bid against each other on 7 major projects. Grayson lost 5. When Aidan won the standard credit contract, Grayson lost nearly £10 million in expected revenue. Harrison explained, Grayson hired a headhunter to place Sophia at White Tech, with the aim of seducing Aidan, destabilizing his personal life, and harming his business judgment. It worked. Aidan lost 2 key contracts during the height of the affair. Evelyn set the file down, her finger tapping the desk. So she never loved him. She was on a mission. Likely so. And there's more. 3 calls from Sophia to an unpublished number after the Christmas party, all traced to the Grayson Tech building. Evelyn laughed, a cold, sardonic sound. Aidan thought he'd found true love. It was a sting operation. She filed the information away for later use. At the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Aidan's new lawyer, Caroline Foster, was a well-known family specialist. Evelyn listened calmly as Foster argued that while Aidan had committed adultery, that wasn't grounds to deny him custody. He was in therapy, he deserved a place in his daughter's life. Then Thomas Smith rose. Your Honor, we believe the adultery was not merely a private failing but part of a commercial plot. He presented bank records, company filings, and communications proving Sophia was paid by Grayson through a shell company. The courtroom buzzed. Aidan's face went slack, he had had no idea. Foster asked for a recess to review. 2 hours later, she countered, even if Sophia had been planted, Aidan's own choices were his responsibility. Being deceived did not make him less guilty of abandoning his family. Evelyn watched Aidan, his white knuckles, his bowed head. At the end, he called her over in the corridor. I didn't know, he said. About Sophia, about any of it. I know you didn't. He gave a bitter smile. I must be a fool. She didn't answer. Instead, still going to therapy? Yes. Twice a week. Good. She started to walk away. Evelyn, I won't fight for custody anymore, he said. Lily is better with you. I just want to see her sometimes. She met his eyes and nodded once, a small grace. Outside the court, spring had arrived. Evelyn stood on the steps, her father beside her, Lily in his arms. Finished? Brian asked. Half finished, she said. She looked back to see Aidan emerge with his mother. He saw them, hesitated, then came over. Lily, he whispered, looking at the child. Brian handed her over at Evelyn's nod. Aidan held his daughter, his hands trembling. She looks like you. Evelyn watched, feeling not hatred but a strange lightness. He no longer mattered. Her life had moved on. Aidan gave Lily back and stepped away. Thank you, Evelyn, for letting me hold her. You can visit Saturdays, 10 to noon. Your mother is welcome too. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and walked away. May. The Grayson suit proceeded. Evelyn's team filed a claim for £5 million in damages. Grayson's stock slid. Evelyn quietly bought 5% of his company through various funds. Not enough to control, but enough to ask questions at shareholder meetings. Uncertainty is his worst enemy, she told her team. We don't need to kill him, just keep him bleeding until he surrenders. Brian patted her shoulder. You're tougher than I was. I learned from you, she said. In June, Grayson capitulated. A public apology, a symbolic £1 payment to Evelyn, and an internal ethics overhaul. Sophia was spared criminal charges for her cooperation, but ordered to do community service. After signing, Grayson stopped Evelyn in the corridor. You know, I spent 5 years trying to destroy Aidan. I did destroy him, but the one who rose in his place was a player I never saw coming. Evelyn smiled. Is that a compliment? Take it how you like. He shrugged and walked away. That evening, on the terrace at Kent, Evelyn and Brian sipped whiskey. What now? He asked. The company is running well, the cases are closed, you have a wide open space. Evelyn looked at the stars. I want to travel Italy, maybe the south of France. I've been a wife and mother for so long. I haven't seen the world. Brian laughed. Go. I'll hold the fort. When you come back, we can think about the next generation. I just won one battle, and you're already planning the dynasty. I'm a grandfather now, he said, clinking his glass with hers. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. July 1st. Evelyn and Lily boarded a flight to Rome. Brian saw them off at Heathrow. Lily waved from Evelyn's arms, babbling Gamper, as they walked toward the gate. The plane rose through the clouds, leaving grey London behind. Evelyn looked down at her sleeping daughter, and thought of Christmas Eve, so far away now. She had thought she'd lost everything, but she'd found herself instead. The sky ahead was endless blue. She kissed Lily's hair and closed her eyes. The revenge was over. What waited was the rest of her life. The sun over Rome was a different species of light altogether, golden and thick, like warm honey poured over ancient stone. Evelyn stepped off the plane with Lily balanced on her hip, the weight of her daughter a familiar anchor against the disorienting sensation of being somewhere entirely new. It had been 7 months since Christmas Eve. 7 months since she'd stood in the snow with nothing but a thin coat and a crying baby, the door of her own home slamming shut behind her. 7 months since she'd knocked on her father's door like a penitent prodigal, certain she had nothing left to offer the world. Now she was walking through the arrivals hall of Leonardo da Vinci Airport, a black Amex in her wallet and a future that stretched out before her like the Roman sky, limitless, luminous, and full of possibility. Look, Lily, she murmured, pointing through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the tarmac beyond, where planes gleamed in the midday heat. We made it. Lily, who was more interested in chewing on the sleeve of her mother's linen blouse, offered a gummy grin and a string of babble that sounded vaguely affirmative. The car that collected them was a sleek black Mercedes, arranged by her father's London office through a local affiliate. The driver, a wiry Italian man named Enzo with silver-rimmed sunglasses and a fondness for opera on the radio, handled the chaotic Roman traffic with the practiced ease of a man who had long ago made peace with chaos. "Signora Hunter, you are here for holiday?" he asked, glancing in the rearview mirror as he merged onto the ring road. "Or business?" "Holiday," Evelyn said, settling Lily more comfortably in her lap. "A long one." She watched the city slide past, first the industrial outskirts, then the ancient stone walls and umbrella pines that marked the edge of the old city. Every corner seemed to hold a history lesson: a ruined aqueduct, a medieval tower, a piazza that had been gathering sunlight for 2,000 years. The hotel her father had booked was a restored palazzo in the heart of Trastevere, all worn terracotta floors and frescoed ceilings and windows that opened onto a courtyard where lemon trees grew in terracotta pots. The concierge, a courtly man in a tailored navy suit, addressed her as Contessa with a straight face, as if Italian nobility were something that could be acquired along with room service. Evelyn didn't correct him. She had learned, in the months since she'd reclaimed her birthright, that there was a certain power in letting people assume the best of you. It was easier than explaining. The first week passed in a blur of gentle discovery. She pushed Lily's stroller through the cobblestone streets of Trastevere, stopping to buy fresh figs from a Mercato vendor who winked at Lily and slipped her a sugar-dusted biscuit. She sat in the Piazza Santa Maria while Lily napped in the stroller beside her, watching the fountain sparkle and the tourists drift past like figures in a painting. She ate pasta at a trattoria where the owner's grandmother still made the sauce from a recipe that had been in the family for 3 generations. She drank espresso so strong it made her feel like she could see through time. She bought a sketchbook and a set of watercolors at an art supply shop near the Campo de Fiori and spent an afternoon trying to capture the way light fell on the cobblestones at golden hour. It was the sketchbook that changed things. The third week of her stay, she took Lily to the Villa Borghese Gardens, where the ancient umbrella pines cast pools of shade over gravel paths. She found a bench near the lake and set Lily down on a blanket with a few toys while she opened the sketchbook and began to draw. She wasn't very good. She knew that. Her lines were too hesitant, her colors too muddy. But there was a quiet satisfaction in the act of trying, in coaxing something onto the page that had previously existed only in her eyes and her memory. "May I see?" The voice was American, softly accented, with a warmth that made her look up. A woman stood a few feet away, 40-ish, with sun-streaked brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and the kind of serene self-possession that came from having long ago made peace with oneself. She wore linen trousers and a sleeveless blouse and carried a leather satchel that looked like it had traveled the world. Evelyn hesitated, then turned the sketchbook around. The woman studied it for a long moment, then nodded. "You have a good eye for composition. The light is lovely. Thank you." Evelyn felt a flush of pleasure that surprised her. "I'm just learning. Aren't we all?" The woman smiled. She gestured at the empty space on the bench beside Evelyn. "Mind if I sit? I promise not to critique." Evelyn laughed. "Please." The woman settled onto the bench, setting her satchel at her feet. She looked over at Lily, who was busily attempting to eat a pine cone, and her smile deepened. "She's beautiful. How old?" 15 months. "Ah, the best age. Everything is new and wonderful and chewable." Evelyn laughed again, a genuine laugh that came from somewhere she hadn't accessed in a while. "That's exactly it. I'm Claire," the woman said, extending a hand. "I'm here on sabbatical. Anthropology professor from Berkeley. I'm researching the role of public spaces in Italian community life." Evelyn took her hand. "Evelyn. And this is Lily. Lovely to meet you both." Claire settled back on the bench, stretching her legs out in front of her. "So what brings you to Rome?" "Holiday. It started as a holiday." Evelyn looked down at her sketchbook, at the tentative lines that tried so hard to capture the light. "But I'm starting to think it might be something else." Claire waited, patient and unhurried, the way academics learned to be. Evelyn hesitated. Then, not sure why she was speaking to a stranger about something she'd barely admitted to herself, she said, "I left my husband a few months ago. It was not a good situation." My daughter and I needed a fresh start. Ah. Claire nodded, her expression soft and without judgment. That takes a lot of courage. Does it? Evelyn looked at Lily, who had abandoned the pine cone and was now trying to capture a butterfly that kept fluttering just out of reach. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like survival. Like waking up one morning and realizing you can't keep doing what you've been doing, so you stop. Sometimes that's all courage is, Claire said quietly. Deciding you've had enough of the old story, and you're going to write a new one. Evelyn turned the sketchbook over in her hands. The paper was rough against her fingers, the watercolor still slightly damp where she'd laid it on too thick. I was a wife for 5 years, she said slowly. For 3 of those years, I was a full-time mother. I cooked, I cleaned, I managed the household, I supported my husband's career. I gave him everything I had. She paused. And he still threw me out on Christmas Eve. Claire's expression shifted, a flicker of something that might have been anger or compassion or both. What a fool. I thought so too, at first. Evelyn let out a breath. But now I think maybe I should thank him. If he hadn't done what he did, I might never have woken up. I might have stayed in that role forever, shrinking myself to fit the space he allowed me. And now? Evelyn smiled, and it was a real smile, not bitter, not strained. Just honest. Now I'm writing a different story. I don't know what the ending looks like yet. But I know it's mine. Claire reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. Good for you. They sat in companionable silence for a while. Lily, having given up on the butterfly, crawled back toward Evelyn and pulled herself up on her mother's leg, demanding attention. Evelyn scooped her up and settled her on her lap. You're an artist, Evelyn? Claire asked, nodding at the sketchbook. I don't know. Evelyn looked down at her work, the clumsy watercolor, the uncertain lines. I took art history in university. I loved it. But I stopped after I got married. My husband thought it was a waste of time, hobby stuff, he called it. I started to believe him. And now? Evelyn looked at Lily, who was clutching the butterfly-shaped buckle of her mother's sandal with fierce concentration. Now I think maybe I want to find out if I still love it. For myself, not for anyone else. Claire smiled. There's a studio in the Monty district that does watercolor workshops on Thursday mornings. The woman who runs it is a friend of a friend, local artist, very talented, very patient. If you're interested, I could give you her card. Evelyn blinked. Yes. I think I would like that. Claire dug through her satchel and produced a worn business card, which she handed over. The name on it was Studio del Color, with an address in Monty and a phone number. Tell her Claire sent you, Claire said. She'll take good care of you. The Studio del Color was tucked away on a narrow street in Monty, behind a door that had been painted a faded shade of robin's egg blue. Evelyn found it on a Thursday morning, leaving Lily with a local nanny recommended by the hotel, a grandmotherly woman named Signora Rosa who seemed to know every baby in Trastevere by name. The studio was small but bright, with tall windows that let in the morning sun and easels arranged around a central work table. The walls were covered with paintings, abstract florals, vivid cityscapes, a few unsettling portraits that seemed to look right through you. The woman at the front was younger than Evelyn had expected, early 30s, with dark curly hair and paint-stained fingers and a laugh that seemed to start somewhere deep in her chest. Ciao. You must be Evelyn. Claire called ahead. She extended a hand. I'm Kiara. Evelyn shook it. Thank you for having me. I should warn you, I'm very much a beginner. Everyone is a beginner somewhere, Kiara said cheerfully. Besides, if you can hold a brush and you want to learn, you're already halfway there. Come, I'll show you the materials. The workshop had only 3 other students, an elderly British expat named Margaret who painted roses with obsessive precision, a young German tourist named Lucas who was trying to capture the light in a way that defied traditional techniques, and a quiet American woman named Diane who said very little but painted with fierce, confident strokes. Evelyn was the weakest of the 4 by a considerable margin. Her brushstrokes were tentative, her colors too cautious, her compositions flat. But Kiara was patient, offering gentle corrections and abundant encouragement. You see how the light falls on the lemon? Kiara said, leaning over Evelyn's shoulder and pointing at the still life they were all working from, a bowl of fruit and a ceramic jug on a sunlit windowsill. It's not yellow. It's white with a hint of yellow, and here, a shadow of blue. Try mixing it. Evelyn tried. The result was still clumsy, but somehow the color came alive in a way she hadn't managed before. Better, Kiara said. You're thinking too much. The brush knows what to do if you let it. By the end of the 3-hour workshop, Evelyn had produced a small watercolor of the still life that she didn't entirely hate. It was nothing compared to the work on the walls, but it was hers. She'd made it with her own hands. As she was packing up, Margaret the British expat shuffled over and peered at her painting with the critical eye of someone who had been doing this since before Evelyn was born. Not bad, she said. The shadows could use more depth, and you've overblended the lemon, but you have an instinct for composition. Thank you, Evelyn said, surprised. You should come to the Thursday group. I've been coming for 3 years. It's the only thing that keeps me sane. Evelyn smiled. I think I will. Walking back through the Monty streets, the paper bag with her watercolor clutched under her arm, Evelyn felt a lightness that surprised her. It wasn't the weight of victory or the satisfaction of revenge. It was something quieter, simpler, the pleasure of doing something for no other reason than that she wanted to. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered an espresso, watching the street life pass by while she sipped it. There was a young couple laughing on a scooter. A vendor selling roasted chestnuts from a cart. An old man walking his tiny dog with the slow deliberation of someone who had all the time in the world. She pulled out her phone. There was a message from her father, Lily is fine. Rosa sent photos. She's been trying to eat a lemon. Seemed to enjoy the taste. Very much your daughter. Attached was a photo of Lily, sitting on Rosa's lap with her face contorted in citrus-induced dismay, the lemon still clutched in her tiny fist. Evelyn laughed out loud, startling the barista. She typed back, she has her mother's appetite for experimentation. Love you. Her father's reply came within seconds, love you too. Enjoy Italy. Don't think about business. She put the phone away. She thought about business anyway, but only briefly. The case against Grayson had been settled, the settlements were in place, the legal teams were handling the details. Everything that needed her attention was being attended to by people who knew what they were doing. For the first time in her adult life, Evelyn had no emergencies to manage. It was terrifying. It was also liberating. 3 days later, Evelyn's phone rang at an inconvenient moment. She was in the middle of coaxing Lily through her evening puree, which involved more food on the high chair tray than in Lily's mouth. The screen said, Aidan. Evelyn stared at it for a full ring. Then a second. Then a third. She answered. Evelyn? His voice was hesitant, strained. I'm sorry to call. Is this a bad time? No. She wiped a smear of carrot from Lily's cheek. Lily's just eating dinner. She's very messy. What do you want? There was a pause. I wanted to see how you're doing. How she's doing. The therapist said I should try to stay connected in appropriate ways, and I thought, I don't know. I thought I'd check in. Evelyn took a breath. This was new. Aidan had never been the type to check in. During their marriage, she'd been the one doing all the emotional labor, the one texting to ask if he'd be home for dinner, the one smoothing over every fracture in their relationship with patient effort. Lily's doing well, she said, surprising herself with how even her voice was. She's trying to talk. She can say mama and no and something that sounds like cheese, although I'm not sure she knows what it means. She's very interested in lemons, which I'm told is typical of stubborn children. Aidan laughed, a short, soft sound. She gets that from you. Definitely. Lily, hearing her mother's voice directed at the phone, reached out a sticky hand and grabbed for it. Evelyn gently redirected her toward a teething biscuit. How are you? She asked, because it felt like the thing to say. Better. He paused. The therapy is helping. It's not easy, looking at yourself the way the therapist asks you to. But I'm trying. I'm really trying. That's good. Evelyn, he stopped. No, I shouldn't. I just wanted to check in. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad Lily is okay. I'll let you go. All right. She hesitated, then added, you can call again. If you need to. For Lily. There was a beat of silence. I might take you up on that. Good night, Evelyn. Good night, Aidan. She hung up and set the phone aside. Lily, having successfully smeared carrot into her hair, looked up at her mother with an expression of unbridled satisfaction. Messy girl, Evelyn said, scooping her up. You get that from your father. Lily giggled, and Evelyn laughed despite herself. The summer stretched out in a gentle, unhurried rhythm. Evelyn and Lily fell into the pattern of life in Rome: morning walks to the market, afternoons in the Villa Borghese gardens, evenings in the Trastevere piazzas where old men played chess and teenagers rode bicycles in lazy circles. Evelyn went to Chiara's studio every Thursday. She wasn't getting better quickly, but she was getting better. Her brushstrokes grew bolder. Her colors became less cautious. She started painting things that weren't arranged still lifes: the view from her window, the shadow of a tree on a cobblestone street, the way Lily's hair looked in the afternoon sun. In August, Claire invited her to a dinner party at an apartment near the Piazza Navona. The other guests were a mix of expats and Italians: a journalist, a chef, a sculptor, a professor of medieval history who seemed to know everything about Rome and was happy to share it at great length. Evelyn found herself, for the first time in years, enjoying a conversation that had nothing to do with marriage or motherhood or her recent past. She talked about art, about travel, about her tentative plans to visit Florence and Venice. She laughed at the chef's stories of kitchen disasters. She debated the merits of different gelato shops with the journalist. You're very different from a few months ago, Claire said later, finding Evelyn on the small balcony overlooking the piazza. That day in the garden, you seemed uncertain. You're not uncertain now. Evelyn leaned on the railing, looking out at the warm lights of the city below. I think I found something I'd lost. Yourself? Maybe. Evelyn smiled. Or maybe just permission to be myself. It's amazing what that does for a person. Claire squeezed her shoulder. You're going to be fine. I know. And Evelyn realized, with a start, that she meant it. There was a message from her father: Lily is fine. Rosa sent photos. She's been trying to eat a lemon. Seemed to enjoy the taste. Very much your daughter. Attached was a photo of Lily, sitting on Rosa's lap with her face contorted in citrus-induced dismay, the lemon still clutched in her tiny fist. Evelyn laughed out loud, startling the barista. She typed back, she has her mother's appetite for experimentation. Love you. Her father's reply came within seconds, love you too. Enjoy Italy. Don't think about business. She put the phone away. She thought about business anyway, but only briefly. The case against Grayson had been settled, the settlements were in place, the legal teams were handling the details. Everything that needed her attention was being attended to by people who knew what they were doing. For the first time in her adult life, Evelyn had no emergencies to manage. It was terrifying. It was also liberating. 3 days later, Evelyn's phone rang at an inconvenient moment. She was in the middle of coaxing Lily through her evening puree, which involved more food on the high chair tray than in Lily's mouth. The screen said, Aidan. Evelyn stared at it for a full ring. Then a second. Then a third. She answered. Evelyn? His voice was hesitant, strained. I'm sorry to call. Is this a bad time? No. She wiped a smear of carrot from Lily's cheek. Lily's just eating dinner. She's very messy. What do you want? There was a pause. I wanted to see how you're doing. How she's doing. The therapist said I should try to stay connected in appropriate ways, and I thought, I don't know. I thought I'd check in. Evelyn took a breath. This was new. Aidan had never been the type to check in. During their marriage, she'd been the one doing all the emotional labor, the one texting to ask if he'd be home for dinner, the one smoothing over every fracture in their relationship with patient effort. Lily's doing well, she said, surprising herself with how even her voice was. She's trying to talk. She can say mama and no and something that sounds like cheese, although I'm not sure she knows what it means. She's very interested in lemons, which I'm told is typical of stubborn children. Aidan laughed, a short, soft sound. She gets that from you. Definitely. Lily, hearing her mother's voice directed at the phone, reached out a sticky hand and grabbed for it. Evelyn gently redirected her toward a teething biscuit. How are you? She asked, because it felt like the thing to say. Better. He paused. The therapy is helping. It's not easy, looking at yourself the way the therapist asks you to. But I'm trying. I'm really trying. That's good. Evelyn, he stopped. No, I shouldn't. I just wanted to check in. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad Lily is okay. I'll let you go. All right. She hesitated, then added, you can call again. If you need to. For Lily. There was a beat of silence. I might take you up on that. Good night, Evelyn. Good night, Aidan. She hung up and set the phone aside. Lily, having successfully smeared carrot into her hair, looked up at her mother with an expression of unbridled satisfaction. Messy girl, Evelyn said, scooping her up. You get that from your father. Lily giggled, and Evelyn laughed despite herself. The summer stretched out in a gentle, unhurried rhythm. Evelyn and Lily fell into the pattern of life in Rome, morning walks to the market, afternoons in the Villa Borghese gardens, evenings in the Trastevere piazzas where old men played chess and teenagers rode bicycles in lazy circles. Evelyn went to Chiara's studio every Thursday. She wasn't getting better quickly, but she was getting better. Her brushstrokes grew bolder. Her colors became less cautious. She started painting things that weren't arranged still lifes, the view from her window, the shadow of a tree on a cobblestone street, the way Lily's hair looked in the afternoon sun. In August, Claire invited her to a dinner party at an apartment near the Piazza Navona. The other guests were a mix of expats and Italians, a journalist, a chef, a sculptor, a professor of medieval history who seemed to know everything about Rome and was happy to share it at great length. Evelyn found herself, for the first time in years, enjoying a conversation that had nothing to do with marriage or motherhood or her recent past. She talked about art, about travel, about her tentative plans to visit Florence and Venice. She laughed at the chef's stories of kitchen disasters. She debated the merits of different gelato shops with the journalist. You're very different from a few months ago, Claire said later, finding Evelyn on the small balcony overlooking the piazza. That day in the garden, you seemed uncertain. You're not uncertain now. Evelyn leaned on the railing, looking out at the warm lights of the city below. I think I found something I'd lost. Yourself? Maybe. Evelyn smiled. Or maybe just permission to be myself. It's amazing what that does for a person. Claire squeezed her shoulder. You're going to be fine. I know. And Evelyn realized, with a start, that she meant it.